What else are we looking for? We're looking for a long-term relationship, still trying to meet somebody. Is anybody else in situations, maybe you're dating right now, maybe you're in a newer relationship? Anybody else want to share their situation just so I can understand how to move forward with this? Well, thank you for sharing, everybody. I appreciate that, just so I can kind of navigate the situation moving forward. And so interestingly enough, the number of daily messages on Tinder in the US has increased by 10% and 15% in March 2020 compared to February 2020 when the pandemic really hit. So that's really interesting. More people are using Tinder, and this is only kind of increasing throughout the pandemic. And the interesting thing is more people are using Tinder, but also for longer periods of time. So studies are actually showing that people are communicating for longer periods of time, 20 to 30% longer conversations than previously in the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit, Tinder and other dating apps have actually kind of set up some regulations in accordance to WHO. And still then, just kind of telling people maybe to not meet up in person and sharing those restrictions, but people are still meeting up more than ever. So it's really interesting to see how people are using Tinder right now more than ever due to the pandemic. And people are reporting using these apps differently than ever before. So I wonder if this could be a space where I turn it to you. How has dating been different? You know, maybe you're using apps and how that could present itself as different, or maybe just your dating environment is different. How has it been different for you during COVID? I can imagine the global pandemic has changed quite a few things. How is it different? Looking for long-term, meeting for the first time over video call rather than in person. Absolutely. And that could be so different, right? It's not what we're used to. And how could those differences present as challenges? What's so different about meeting on video versus meeting in person? It's a different form of connection, right? And that's something that we're all going to unpack today. Just how much that looks different now compared to previously. Does anybody else want to share, how is your dating experience different right now? I'd love to hear everybody's perspective. Everybody has a unique perspective to this. I know one of my friends is saying that dating during COVID is actually making exclusivity a lot more rapid. So for instance, having those conversations around, you know, are you seeing anybody else, right? Are you being safe? Those conversations are starting quite a lot earlier because you have to make sure that you're kind of picking and choosing who you're spending time with. So that's interesting as well, right? Maybe we're kind of fast tracking those steps and those processes to romantic relationships. Anything else? I know another friend of mine was on a dating app and was chatting with somebody. And then after a little while, I think that their intentions were a little bit more to get to know the person, but then the person after a little while kind of deleted their dating profile and let them know that. And so they felt like they were kind of on different wavelengths in that regard, right? So it's really showing how just dating online can, especially during COVID, can be this rapid process sometimes. And maybe you're somebody who's in a relationship and you're having to navigate, right? Long-term, like long distance, right? Maybe you're conversing online more than you were ever before, and how that could be really different. Maybe you're having to share your love languages in different ways, right? So having to be really creative in these spaces because everything is looking a lot different. Maybe it's you're having to put your thinking hat on and how can we make this day special, because it's a little bit less easy to go out, you know, for dinner and, you know, go to a concert or whatever that might be. It's a lot more kind of creative outlets right now. And so people are actually saying that people, and particularly men, are actually being kinder on these apps. They're taking longer time on these apps, right? The conversations are longer and maybe they're more meaningful. So maybe people are spending longer time, right? And this could contribute to maybe this idea that when we meet in person, maybe we set up a time and then we kind of just like stop connecting until we meet in person. But now, given that connecting and conversing on these apps is the only way to communicate, people are spending more time on these apps and are maybe a little bit more patient. And so COVID is actually making us rethink dating and human connection. So there was this kind of scientific study where they gave they put a monkey in the middle and they gave them the option of going to food and answering to their basic needs. And then they also gave them a fluff that kind of resembled the feel of their mother, and determining whether the monkey would go to the food or to the fluff. And interestingly enough, the monkey chose the fluff that resembled their mom. So that is showing that, evolutionarily speaking and biologically speaking, how much humans need that physical touch and that human connection, right? And how important that is biologically for us. And so apps can be really useful at this time, as they give people an opportunity to find others to talk to, even if not in person. And so these are kind of questions that I'm going to answer throughout our time together. You know, how can we create meaningful connections with others? How can we find some fun during this time? And how can we be creative in our dating? And so those are the kind of things that I'm going to explore today. So there are many kind of benefits and challenges to dating online, and I think that a lot of us may be kind of stuck on these cons. I think it's a lot easier to come up with the cons of dating right now, but I kind of wanted to unpack and explore both of them. So why don't we, the pros and the cons. So why don't we start off with the cons? What are the cons or the challenges to online dating right now? I'd love to hear you all in the chat. What are the cons? I'm going to sit in this a little bit so we can have some time to think about our experiences with the pros and cons of dating right now. So one obvious con that I kind of think of is the fact that we can't be in person, right? And so what does that attend to? That tends to that physical touch or that sexual or physical connection that we're missing right now. Does anybody kind of feel that way? Maybe that they're missing that physical connection or that in-person connection? Another thing that I can think of is this idea that you don't get to see this person in real life, right? So just these little things that you might be attracted to, whether it's their mannerisms, the way that they hold themselves, the way they present themselves, that's something that's a little bit less transferable in a virtual setting. What about the pros? Does anybody have an idea of any pros? What are the benefits of dating online? Easy access, totally, right? You don't have to drive like 40 minutes. Thank you, Felix, for that. You don't have to drive 40 minutes to see this person. Maybe it's a little bit easier to get ready. You can kind of just chill and then get right into the date. Totally easy access, absolutely. What else? What are the benefits of dating online? And so I kind of touched on a little bit, But these are just kind of examples. So in terms of cons, we talked about that lack of physical chemistry or experience of that physical touch and intimacy. You don't get to see them in the real world. But there are many pros, right? Like Felix mentioned, that easy access. It's a lot easier to just kind of get on that date. There's not as many barriers to that, right? To setting up a time. Maybe we're a little bit more kind of available right now, so it could be easier. Or that idea that, videoing before meeting in person can actually be a safer, more or less, provide more like less pressure, right? So this idea that, you know, first dates can be really scary, right? And so maybe if you meet the person, virtually, it answers to that fear, right? Maybe you're in this safe space, you're home, you feel comfortable, and so it can kind of take away that feeling that there's a lot of pressure. And another thing, it acts as like a screener for who you want to meet in person. It's the worst thing when you go on a date and then you're kind of not really connecting with the person, but then you have to be stuck there, right? So this idea that we can kind of feel out the connection, see how, if you're vibing or if you're enjoying each other before actually putting that time and effort into meeting in person. And another thing is that there's that emphasis on deeper emotional connection, right? So a lot of the times when you're meeting in person, maybe you have a really strong physical and chemistry, right? But then over time, you're realizing that that emotional connection isn't there. And emotional connection is super, super important for a long-lasting relationship, right? It is the foundation of a long-lasting relationship. So that emphasis on that emotional connection could actually create a really strong foundation for this future relationship, or this potential future relationship. Another thing is that it helps us practice good communication, right? Because when we're texting, we have a bit of buffer time. We can think about what we're going to say and how we're going to say it. And maybe it's setting that tone for the way that you communicate with your partner moving forward in the relationship. And also, it's that emphasis on meaningful conversations, right? Like we mentioned before, that emphasis on emotional connections means that conversation is a large piece of that connection. So really having those meaningful conversations. And I know this isn't ideal, it's not what we're used to, but the thing is it kind of can be silly and creative and fun sometimes. So trying to have a little bit of fun with it, be creative, think outside the box, kind of do things that you wouldn't typically do on date nights can kind of add a bit of spiciness or excitement to the relationship. And so this is something that I wanted to emphasize, in terms of video dates. I know that they can feel uncomfortable. So try to make yourself as comfortable as possible. Make sure that you set the mood, right? Whether that's dimming the lights or adjusting the screen so it's in kind of like a flattering angle. I know for me, what I've noticed is that in terms of lighting, it's a lot nicer when the light's coming above you or right in front of you than when it's coming on the side. Because when it's coming on the side, you can get that weird shadow on your face, and maybe it's not as great lighting or great angles. And so just being mindful of those things. And, maybe you're somebody that enjoys going for a date and having a drink, right? Going for a drink with somebody. So if that's you, pour yourself a drink if that feels comfortable, if that kind of makes you feel a little bit more in the mood and gets those kind of jitters or those nerves out. Just make yourself as comfortable as possible for these dates. And so this is another thing that I wanted to talk about, this idea that we have to get creative right now, right? It's a lot less easy to just go out and, well, we can't go out for dinner, we can't go to concerts, right? So this is when we have to think creatively and think outside of the box. And so what are ways that we can make dating creative right now? This is I think COVID is such a good opportunity to engage in our creative outlets. And Brene Brown is somebody that I really think is really awesome. And what she says there are no such thing as creative and non-creative people. There are people that choose to be creative or people that don't engage in creativity. So it's this emphasis that creativity is making meaning of things and everybody's creative, right? So COVID is such a good opportunity to engage in those creative outlets, right? And with that person. And it's kind of fun to have that person or that dating partner to do those things with and try new things with. So how can we be creative? We are all creative. How can we be creative in this dating environment? How have everybody been creative so far? Maybe you've had kind of virtual dates. What does that look like? I'd love to hear from you all. I'm going to sit in this for a bit so I can give us all a little bit to digest this question. How can you get creative? Well, I have some ideas for you. So one thing is watching a movie together on Netflix Party. I know it's not the same as being in person, but at least you have that one movie that you're watching together. You can connect on this thing. Netflix chat, Kahoot games. Ooh, what are Kahoot games? Can you tell me more, Lucas? Are those just kind of games in general? Kahoot games. Is a learning game like trivia. Oh, so fun. Testing knowledge. Cool. Pictionary, awesome. Yeah, you can get to know somebody quite well, right? And what their interests are from like trivia and stuff like that because of the things that they know. Maybe they're really knowledgeable in history. Then you have an idea that, oh, there's somebody that really enjoys history. It's a good kind of way to get to know each other. Absolutely. Pictionary, awesome. Like a virtual Pictionary. Thanks, Strider. Anything else? Even if maybe you haven't done it with a dating partner, but you've just done it with a friend throughout the pandemic. What are ways that we can get creative? Because we can use those outlets with our dating partners as well. So Lucas mentioned Netflix chat, which is one thing that I was going to say, right? You know, connecting over a movie. I know it's not ideal. We're not in person, but at least you can kind of gossip and enjoy the movie together. Having a virtual dinner date is another one, right? Making the same exact meal. That kind of brings you a little bit closer to that person. Even though it's virtual, you feel a little bit closer because you're connecting on this tangible thing, right? This mutual movie that you're watching together or this mutual meal that you're eating. Connecting on these tangible things as much as we can, right? And then we also mentioned, Lucas mentioned playing a game, like Kahoot games. So that was one thing that I had on my list too, right? Playing like a two-person online game together, like Pictionary as well, like Strider mentioned. You could play 20 questions. And if you don't want to play 20 questions the old-fashioned way of like, what object am I thinking about? You could play like a 20-question lightning round about one another to get to know each other, right? What a quick way to get to know somebody. Another really cool one is each taking a personality test and sharing results. Personality tests show so much about a person. Maybe they're introverted, maybe they're extroverted, maybe they're somebody that's highly anxious, maybe they're really laid back. Maybe they like to communicate, or maybe they're not as communicative. Maybe they are quite agreeable, or maybe they like to challenge people and engage in a lot of critical thinking. So it gets to know, you know, the way this person is, right? Their values, what's important to them. So it's a really good way to get to know kind of their vibe. And another thing is doing a live Instagram workout, a dance party, or another activity. Doing these things that you haven't ever done together. Like I know, like I was looking for my partner and I online for like I know that they really like cooking, so maybe doing like a virtual cooking class. I know there are also kind of like virtual massage therapy classes too, which are really cool, and I don't even think they're that expensive. So it's this idea that you can kind of add to that desire and just be like, oh, like I'm taking this virtual class, you know, one day when we're able to meet up in person, I can show you a little bit about what I learned in this massage therapy class, right? So it's adding to this desire, doing this thing together that you've never done before, engaging in that creativity, right? Because what a good opportunity to think outside of the box now that we're forced to. Any last kind of comments about how to be creative? Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for participating. That was really great to hear your ideas and your thoughts. And so one thing that I wanted to mention is this emphasis on quality time and space. You know, because of modern technology, we're always communicating, we're always talking, but are we really having that quality time? I would argue not, right? Because we, when we're texting 24/7 all day long, we're doing 5,000 other things. So your focus is not really on this person. You're not really fully present with this person. And when you're texting 24/7, you don't have that space for yourself. And it's kind of this idea that distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? So giving ourselves a little bit of space for that person, a little bit of space to focus on ourselves, increases that level of desire. And so it's also this idea of kind of quality over quantity, right? Maybe if we're talking less often, then we can have these deliberate, intentional spaces to have conversation. And these deliberate, intentional spaces might be having, that 6 p.m. Zoom date, right? Rather than talking 24/7 all day, having that really intimate quality time is extremely important. And so this kind of leads me to my next kind of topic, this idea of communicating versus really connecting. I think we can all argue that these are really different things, right? You can have 10,000 followers on Instagram and be like communicating with somebody 24/7 and commenting on their photos and liking their photos, but not really feeling a genuine and real connection. And so real, genuine connection involves giving somebody advice, right? Being there for emotional support, asking them how they are. So how can we channel these things into our dating relationships? How can we ensure that we're not just communicating, but we are really connecting? And so how to do that is having real conversation, checking in, right? Not just how are you, but how are you really, right? Asking questions like, how are you handling this pandemic? The thing is the pandemic has been, our reality for about a year now. And so I think that some of us are actually forgetting how much it's impacting us, right? And so you being like, how are you handling this pandemic? I bet you might be like the first person to ask that question in quite some time, because it's kind of our new reality and maybe we're forgetting to check in sometimes. So asking these important questions. How are you handling the pandemic? What are you doing to help yourself? Is there anything that I can do to help you? What do you need? Right? These real, genuine questions. I met somebody once, and it was our first time meeting, and they asked me this question that was really powerful, and I remember it kind of caught me off guard. But after having that conversation, I remember just our friendship just went skyrocketed. And what this person asked me was, what are you passionate about? And that's a big question, but man, do you get to know somebody from that. You get to know their values. You get to know what they love to do, what's really, really important to them. So finding these genuine, real questions that can create the meaningful conversation. Does anybody have any ideas of kind of a real, genuine question they could ask that really starts good conversation? What's something that starts good conversation? Even just kind of noticing patterns in people's behavior, right? So like, let's say if you've talked to the same person maybe twice, and both times they were like, oh, I just watched a movie. Oh, okay, so they just watched a movie twice in, let's say, 2 days. That's an observation. Maybe watching movies is something that they really enjoy doing. So what a good opportunity to unpack and show them that you've been listening, and show them that you've been noticing this pattern, right? Oh, okay, I noticed that you've watched a couple movies. You watched 2 movies since we've talked last. Like, are you really into movies? That says a lot about a person, right? I know for me, I haven't watched a movie in a long time. So that says a lot about me and my attention span and what I like to do for fun. So being really attentive and present with that person and noticing patterns in their behavior and in what they're sharing with you shows them that you're really listening. Another thing that helps that this idea of real connection and communication is varying your communication. And so maybe if we're texting 24/7, it gets boring, right? It gets kind of same old, right? So if you're ensuring that you're texting a little bit, and then maybe you're having a phone call, and then maybe you're going on FaceTime or on Zoom, or maybe you're sending this person an email to their work email just saying, oh, thinking of you. I think that I personally would like that, but I know a lot of people might not. So just feeling out that partner, but just varying that communication. Maybe writing a handwritten note and sending it to somebody's house, right? That adds to that excitement. It keeps things spicy and exciting and different. And the other thing is company. You know, I talked a lot about this idea of quality time versus space, but I think it's everything in a balance, right? Sometimes we're in the space where we're feeling just really lonely because of the pandemic and we just want that company. You know, that person to be there but not really there, but just physically there, right? Like when I'm doing my dinner, just knowing that somebody's in the space. So sometimes even just reaching out to that person, whether it's your dating partner, somebody that you've only met a couple times, or long distance dating partner, right? Just to have them there for company while you're doing laundry or, you know, having dinner, whatever that looks like, right? So having that balance between space and company and real genuine quality time. And so love languages, I'm sure that some of us have heard of these before, but I did want to emphasize them because they might look a little bit different right now, right? Words of affirmation. So these are kind of the way that you show love and the way that you understand love, or from your partner, right? So words of affirmation is one. That's one that could be really, really awesome right now, right? We're constantly communicating, that emotional connection is there. And so, you know, saying things like, I love you, I'm thinking of you. Acts of service, you know, whether that be cooking for the person, or picking them up and driving them somewhere, or cleaning after them, you know, what that could look like right now due to the pandemic. Maybe acts of service would be like sending, you know, your partner an Uber Eats, or maybe there's like this dish that you both love together or you talk about really enjoying, and then maybe you could send it to the both of you, right? And how that could be kind of a cute little connection. Quality time, like I mentioned before, deliberate time for that person, right? Being fully present with that person, not doing 50 things at once, because I think that with the pandemic, that's kind of like our new reality, is that we're, you know, home is kind of everything. Home is work, home is fun, home is sleep, right? And so just making sure that we have that deliberate time for that person. Physical touch, and then giving gifts to the person could be a love language as well. So now I know that physical touch is a little bit harder right now, but the thing is everybody has 2 or 3 or even more love languages. So maybe we just need to lean in those other love languages right now that might not be physical touch. Or maybe we can think outside of the box a little bit. How can you engage in physical touch with not engaging in physical touch? You know, maybe that's like talking about like, oh, if I was with you, this is what we would be doing. You know, answering to those that need a physical touch and that desire, and having that desire build for when you do get to meet that person in real life, if that is their love language. And so these are more tips for successful dating experience. Does anybody have any comments on love language? Maybe I should kind of take a little breather here and check in. Okay. So other tips for dating a dating experience during COVID. Pick a time and stick to it and treat it like a real date. I know it's so easy for us to just kind of roll out of bed and go onto the Zoom, or like maybe all kind of plans feel not very fixed and they feel very kind of fluid and not rigid. But try your best to be rigid about these plans. It's a date. You know, I know there's such thing as kind of being fashionably late, you know, but um, not too late, right? And so just making sure that you're really sticking to this time, you're picking it, you're ready, you're getting mentally prepared for this date. Another thing that might be kind of obvious, but is actually very important, is making sure your background looks good. This is a little window to your life, right? So maybe you don't want that person to see your laundry hamper or kind of your messy desk. Maybe you want them to see like a nice picture of you, or a painting that you really like, or a plant. Maybe you're really into plants, right? So just thinking about your background and what you want people to see. But I also want to acknowledge that when we're dating somebody in real life, maybe, you know, our room environment is something that they don't see for a little bit of time until we're ready for that. So if that's something that doesn't make you feel comfortable, you can always go on Zoom and use those kind of simulation backgrounds, if that is more comfortable for you. And then another thing is trying out different platforms. See what you like best, right? Maybe it's Instagram or Facebook or FaceTime or Zoom or a house party. I know for me, when I FaceTime, I actually feel a lot more comfortable on my computer than I do on my phone. And I don't know why that is. I think that maybe when I'm using my phone, it's just like that much too close to me or whatever that might be. But I know that that's something that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So I would be mindful of that going into a virtual date night, right? Just knowing that I feel more comfortable on the computer, I would do that to make sure that I'm most comfortable. Or maybe you like house party more for games, whatever that might be. So just kind of trying out those different platforms to see what feels good for you. Another thing is testing out your audio and your video first. That would suck if you showed up to a date and then they couldn't hear you and they couldn't see you and you just had to reschedule for tech issues, right? That would really be unfortunate. So just checking in on those things, and it kind of goes back to the idea of the video date kind of slide about the angles and stuff. Making sure that it's a good angle, good lighting, making sure you have nothing in your teeth, making sure you like, the way that you are looking on your video, and finding a bit of extra time to set up your tablet, set up your computer, set up your phone. Participate in whatever rituals gets you amped up. I know that, again, like, because home is everything and we're always at home, it's so easy to just kind of go from one thing to another without giving ourselves that transition period, right? So if, I know some of my friends, they like to have a drink or a glass of wine before a date, right? Makes maybe kind of like gets them warm, gets them excited. Or maybe you like to just put on a pump up playlist. Maybe that's something that you did when we could date in person, right? So do those things that amp you up for the date. Treat it like a real date, right? And another thing is try to have fun, try to relax with it. I always try to remind myself that we are so fortunate that this is happening during a situation where we can all communicate virtually. And it's actually kind of a really cool thing that we can all connect, even though there's a global pandemic somehow, right? So I always kind of approach new kind of connections and new people as being like, wow, this is actually really cool that I get to meet this person. And so maybe just having that perspective when you're going in. So cool that that I get to meet this person. Maybe it won't be this amazing romantic connection, but it's still cool that I'm connecting with somebody. So maybe just kind of having that kind of trying to relax and just enjoying it and having fun with it. And this is just a reminder, don't forget regular dating rules that apply, right? Don't forget your standards, right? Like, don't do anything that doesn't make you comfortable. Don't forget your standards. So let's say if, you have something that you want specifically in a partner, don't forget that that's something that's important to you just because it's a little bit harder to meet people right now. Don't do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, and listen to that gut feeling inside, right? If your gut is telling you that something feels uncomfortable, it's probably not right for you, right? So listening to that gut feeling. Yes, things are different right now, and maybe you're trying new things in the way that things are different because it's virtual, but there's a difference between kind of things being different and new or being completely uncomfortable. So just listening to that gut feeling within you. And making sure you set those clear boundaries, right? This goes back to that idea of space and quality time. So deciding when to talk, how often you want to talk, for how long you want to talk. If you're very transparent and open with your dating partner about this, they actually might understand, right? Maybe if you're able to say, you know what, I don't love to be connected 24/7. I kind of feel it exhausting, but I really do care about you. So are you okay if I check in the morning and maybe at night, and we can have like meaningful dates at night? Right? Just making sure that you can have these genuine kind of conversations where your boundaries are heard and understood. And then another thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is how to celebrate Valentine's Day during COVID. Maybe you feel right now pretty bummed, right? Maybe it feels like you can't celebrate it with your partner because maybe your partner is far away, or maybe you're kind of in a new relationship and you don't know what that looks like, right? But you can still celebrate it even though you're apart. And that's going off the kind of creative slides of how to be creative in this space. How can you make Valentine's Day a special day, even though there are, restrictions? You can send each other virtual Valentines. That's another thing, right? Maybe sending each other notes. If you can't be in person, it'd be really cute to send like a card or something like that. And if you don't necessarily have a dating partner right now, just sending it to a friend or somebody that you care about. Valentine's Day is about love, right? And people that we love. Hang around with loved ones in your bubble. If you can't connect with a dating partner, just connect with people around you. Another thing is, don't forget to love yourself. Spoil yourself. Watch that movie that you love. Make that dinner that you love. Have your bath, whatever that is. This is a day of love, and that should be exuded to yourself. I think we often forget that we are a priority too. So treat Valentine's Day like a day of love for yourself. And another thing that I want to mention is Valentine's Day, it's kind of, some people are comfortable with it, some people are not, some people celebrate it, some people don't, and all of that's okay and so fair, right? But if you're somebody that doesn't celebrate it or doesn't really like Valentine's Day, or maybe Valentine's Day is just like a sad day for you, just reminding yourself maybe that just like another day, just like another 24 hours, it'll pass. It's kind of like a wave from the ocean that'll come and go, might be helpful. And so we're entering the last kind of chunk of the presentation. I'd love to pass this over to anybody who has any questions about how to navigate dating during this time. I'd love to answer some questions if you have any. Does anybody have any questions about kind of the content that we just looked at? So anything that maybe I said that was a bit confusing, or? Okay, well, it doesn't look like we don't have any questions right now, but if for some reason something, can you please go over what you were saying? Do you mind being a little bit more specific about which part? About distance during dating. So which part about distance during dating? Kind of, are you meaning kind of doing like a bit of a summary? Is that what I'm hearing? Or how you shouldn't be texting or on calls all the time. Yeah, totally. So it's just this idea of being a little bit more creative right now during distance dating. No, that's okay. No problem, Ria. Thank you for clearing that up. But yeah, just this idea that we want to be a little bit more creative right now because things are not available out there, to just kind of look inward on our creativity, right? How can we be creative in our dates? Whether that's having Netflix dates, whether that's doing new things like taking online classes together, whether that's doing Kahoot games like Lucas said, or Pictionary like Strider said, right? And the other idea of kind of not being always connected is just this idea that it can get really, really exhausting to always be connected, right? So ensuring that you are taking space to yourself and setting those boundaries of, okay, maybe I don't want to talk all day. I'll message you in a couple hours, thinking of you, whatever that looks like. Taking that space for yourself and then allocating genuine quality time. This goes out to especially maybe people that are in long-term relationships and are quarantining with their partner. Maybe you're with your partner 24/7, and so you're kind of feeling a little bit heavy. Maybe things are getting a little bit boring, or whatever that might look like, because you're just always together, right? So trying to, maybe you can't have physical distance from one another because you live together, but maybe just emotional or mental distance, whether that's kind of you going to read and doing your own thing and them doing their own thing, and then setting up quality time. So those dates, those virtual dates, whatever that looks like, right? Having that quality time where your focus is on that individual, right? Because when we're always connected, our focus is on 20 different things, and then maybe we're connecting and we're texting here and there and just answering quickly. But just having that deliberate time for that person. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you for your question. I really appreciated it. Does anybody else have any questions? Any other questions at all, or comments even? Maybe something that I said kind of stuck out to you and you want to share? Okay, well, if you do have a question, please feel free to ask. And these are just kind of resources that I wanted to provide you all. You know, I know that it can feel really lonely right now because of COVID, right? And that could be really challenging. And we don't have those regular kind of coping strategies that we used to have, whether that's, you know, if your coping strategy is something out there that's closed, right? We don't have access to that anymore. And that could feel really hard. And so I did just want to let you know that us at Shift Collab, we are always, always here. You're welcome. Even if you're interested in just kind of like thinking about therapy, you're not really sure, you can set up a 15-minute meet and greet consultation that's totally free. So just going on the Shift Collab website to inquire. How to avoid your partner feeling insecure at times. Ooh, good question. Insecure at times. I'm trying to answer that question and be a little bit more general because I don't know like specifics, but I think that open communication is such an important tool. Transparency is such an important tool. If your partner is feeling insecure, just putting that insecure to rest through open communication. You know, being a little bit more attentive. You know, maybe you recognize that your partner, when they're feeling insecure, kind of backs away, right? So instead of letting them back away, kind of being like, I'm noticing you're backing away right now. Is there something bothering you? I think genuine open communication is something that can put that insecurity to rest. I'm not sure if that was kind of a specific enough answer. Did I answer your question? Absolutely. Totally. Yeah, I think that genuine open conversation is just so important, and I think we kind of forget to use it sometimes because, you know, maybe when somebody's feeling reserved, we kind of answer to that, and then us ourselves feel reserved. But if we kind of pinpoint, like, I'm noticing that you're feeling insecure right now, or I'm noticing you're backing away, and having those genuine conversations without attacking, without being like, you know, you're doing this to me, you know, you're, you know, right? Instead of that, what you can use, is a really cool tool, is they're called I statements. So I feel like this because next time I, like, using I statements and focusing on how you're feeling rather than what the person did would answer to that feeling of not attacking that person and just having an open, genuine conversation about, you know, I'm feeling really sad because of, you know, what happened earlier. Next time, would you mind doing this? Having that open conversation without attacking. And then in terms of another pathway of support, student care is always available to you. You can always open up to a mentor in your life, whether that's, you know, a professor or a TA or a coach, and opening up to people that you trust. I know that can be hard sometimes, right? Because we don't want people around us to see kind of our quote unquote weaknesses or challenges or self-esteem issues, right? But what I've noticed over time is that when I'm able to open up to somebody, and somebody selective that I've chosen is trustworthy, I feel like I actually feel a deeper connection. I think that it's easier to connect with somebody on mutual challenges because maybe they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you said that because I feel that same way. And it's easier to connect on challenges than it is on just kind of our strengths and accomplishments and weaknesses. So just be mindful of asking yourself, you know, who is somebody that I can open up to? There are also many apps and digital outlets that you can use to support yourself. So whether that's an app about meditation or an app about journaling, or there are kind of anxiety apps as well. There are many apps out there that can support you right now as well. And don't ever forget to support yourself. You are a priority. And I know life tells us that we aren't sometimes, you know, we just get so carried away with, especially being students, right? You have so many different things. Maybe you have so much due and you feel like you weren't productive or something. So you're like, I don't deserve a break. I don't deserve to do this for myself. But the thing is, we need to refresh ourselves sometimes. So even just giving ourselves that 10-minute break that's attending to our needs, we might come back and feel so much more productive because we need that energy, right? We need that refresher. And so reminding yourselves that you need to do something that will make you feel good and make you feel refreshed. And so you've got this. I know it can be really hard with COVID, and maybe we're feeling lonely. Maybe we're feeling really stressed. You've got this, but we're also here to help. And so if you're ever wanting to inquire some more, the Shift Collab website, just shiftcollab.com is there. I also put my email. Would love, if you want to connect. And if you're looking for maybe a therapist, but you're not really sure who would be a good fit, or you want kind of some advice, info@shiftcollab.com, you can email them and they can help you find a therapist that feels like a really good fit for you. And you can always set up that 15-minute meet and greet consultation that's totally free, just to kind of check out how you're feeling about them, seeing if you feel a connection to this person, and in terms of a professional connection moving forward. Well, that is the end of our presentation today, everybody. Thank you so much for everything. That was honestly so much fun. I always love talking about things like this, about dating during COVID. Dating is just such a cool topic, and it's so nice to connect with people. Sometimes I think, I'm missing connection too because of COVID. So I always love these opportunities to connect with fellow students that are, in the same boat as me. So I really appreciated our time. I hope everybody has a good day, and I think you're all going into reading week next week, if I'm right. So I hope you have a good reading week. If you're stressed out, make sure to allocate some time for yourself. If you do celebrate Valentine's Day, I hope you have a good Valentine's Day. If you don't, make sure to give yourself love, and the day will pass, okay? Well, bye, everybody. Thank you so much. That was so much fun. You're so welcome. Have a great day as well. You're welcome. Thank you.